to The Download, where we bring you discussion analysis from a Catholic perspective. Today's Thursday, July 27th, 2023. I'm Brad Eli here with my two hosts, Simon Rafe and T. Ray Brock. And occupying the fourth chair today, host of Red Top Report, Joe Enders. You can't stop him. You can only hope to contain him. Hey, Joe.
How's it going? Thanks for having me on.
Abortion will be on the ballot in the state of Ohio in November. Ohio's Secretary of State announced Tuesday a pro-abortion group had gathered enough signatures to put a proposal on the ballot that would, if passed, enshrine the so-called right to abortion with an amendment to the state constitution. But before that vote in November, voters in the Buckeye State will first vote in a special election on August 8th to decide some details of how the amendment votes like this actually play out. The main thing that will be decided in August is whether an amendment needs a simple majority to pass or needs 60% of voters to support it. If the rule changes is passed and the threshold moves all the way up to 60%, that will make it even harder for the pro-abortion amendment to pass. We want to make a point, though, that Ohio has a wonderful, the people, the legislators that they picked, have passed a heartbeat bill that actually, and the Catholic governor, DeWine, a large family and a Catholic background himself, signed it. And this heartbeat bill actually goes to the heart of the issue, where a beating heart can be detected in as little as 5 weeks. So it's actually very severe. And Trey, did you want to speak to the exceptions or not of that bill? Actually, what exceptions they have to that?
I'm not sure what the exceptions are to that, Brad, but something that is interesting about Ohio specifically, we were talking about before the show, is Cleveland Right to Life. And I know that they had something to do with this because they work with Ohio Right to Life. Cleveland Right to Life, the distinction there, they are not affiliated with the National Right to Life movement. And so they do things kind of however they want, and they have a very strong stance against abortion. They don't allow any exceptions. And one thing I want to bring up, this is from 2013, and I heard about this morning. They took a stance against gay so-called marriage back in 2013, and they were actually disavowed by the National Right to Life movement. That was in 2013 that happened. I think the importance of that and is just that they get to the Cleveland Right to Life. They get to the heart of the issue. They allow no exceptions. Perhaps some of you guys can weigh in on the bill.
The bill itself, the heartbeat law, has no exceptions. So I don't know if this is necessarily speaking to some sort of uncompromising quality of people from Ohio, or if this is just speaking to the work that Cleveland Right to Life is doing, because obviously Cleveland Right to Life is going to have a large influence there in the state of Ohio, with that sort of stuff. But this, you and I were discussing this before the show, Trey, that the idea of saying, well, we're a pro-life group, we're Cleveland Right to Life, okay, or your, Delaware Right to Life, or your Texas Right to Life, whatever group you are. If you're going to say we're right to life, you need to be right to life in all aspects of it. That means you can't just come along and say, well, we're actually just anti-abortion. Okay, well, are you anti-euthanasia? Are you anti, harvesting organs from living people? Are you anti-contraception? Are you anti-gay marriage? All of these things that are, in fact, against life, because what they are is they're anti-natural. They're against nature. And, look, at the core of this, the reason we have abortions being performed is not because people want to kill babies. Okay, there may be a very, very small percentage of people out there who are all about, hey, let's kill some babies, and they're some sort of ridiculous Disney villain kind of person. But I really don't think that there are such people. What they are is these are individuals who are wanting to engage in behaviors, they want to engage in sexual behaviors without consequence. Now, the sexual behavior which causes children to be conceived is regular heterosexual sex. We're all very familiar with that. We all know how that works. If you don't, ask your father. But as well with that, you've got a whole group of people out there, homosexuals, transgender individuals, all of these kind of individuals who are wanting to engage in other kinds of sexual activity and wanting to engage with it without consequence. That's why there is this fusion. If you go to the March for Life in Washington, D.C., there's kind of the protesters, the counter-protesters. bunch of those people are gay. You know what? Lesbianism is the best form of contraception in the world. It works all the time. Lesbians are not getting pregnant. Gay men are certainly not getting pregnant. Transgender individuals are not getting pregnant. People engaging in all sorts of bizarre wackadoodle sex are not getting pregnant. Yet they are there campaigning for the right to abortion. Why are they there campaigning for the right to abortion? We were at the March for Life. One of these gay activists there who was protesting, said to Mike Voris there, and it was like a light bulb going off for Voris. This chap said to him, I think it was a chap, said to him, it's not about abortion, it's about sexual license. So kudos to Cleveland Right to Life to coming out with this thing, because that's absolutely 100% true.
Yeah, and it's also a great shout out to Molly Smith, the head of Cleveland Right to Life, and talking to that national Right to Life. They butt heads with them because of the fact that National Right to Life and all those political arms of the Rhino Party basically want this incremental approach. Well, that's never going to pass, therefore you don't want to go so severe. Well, here you had a law that got passed without any exceptions whatsoever. It is being held up in court right now, but at the fact that there is no exceptions also speaks to something extremely important. How in the world would you say, well, if you were conceived, little child, because of rape or incest, we can go ahead and kill you. You're expendable. The law doesn't apply to you. And the law actually is the title of the SB 23 down in Ohio is Human Rights Protection, and the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness as, inalienable rights not given to you by the government, but supposedly protected by the government, inalienable, given to you by God, and inalienable can't be separated from you by any government entity whatsoever. So this idea that if a guy commits a crime, that's deserving of the death penalty, which we don't agree with, anymore, according to the Catechism, that why does the baby get the death penalty? But why is the baby allowed to be aborted? Yeah. And Ohio did it right. They're following the Cleveland Right to Life lead in the fact that there should not be an exception for rape and incest. And when you do that, which is just all the way across the country, exception for rape and incest. All these good people will say, we have a very strong law. It allows the exception for rape and incest. Right there, you're saying, but there's a certain group of people out there who were conceived in rape or in incest, and those are unfortunate situations. But man, they're still human, and you don't kill those people. Yeah. And if you looked at all the people across the country and found out every single one of them that was ever rape or incest, there'd be a sizable number of people out there walking around the streets who are living because they weren't aborted.
This is an interesting discussion, too, because this really comes to the moral character of the country and what the country itself stands for. And if we are looking at how the Declaration of Independence was, which is a statement of the values of this new nation that's being created, we say we are all created equal. We are not all born equal. I think that was a very good point that Dr. William Mahoney had made to me at one point when we were talking about the abortion issue. And this is the problem with the incremental approach. We either believe that or we don't believe that. Because what happens is you get into all of these political problems that come down the line when you allow for these exceptions. You are desensitizing the populace in that area on that issue. You're making it seem like, well, this has been the standard for the longest time, so this is actually the statement of our moral values. Well, no, go back to the Declaration of Independence. That is the statement of our moral values, and that's what a lot of people are missing. And you can actually look to Ohio right now and see that Ohio is actually becoming more conservative as time goes on. Trump won it in 2016 and he won it in 2020. That used to be a bellwether state. It's not even coming through accurately anymore. Now we can talk about why that might be the case in 2020 specifically, but it's always been an indicator of swing state of which would become the more. But he keeps winning by more and more.
You want to tell the audience how far always goes back?
Oh yeah, it goes all the way back to the 1960s. We're talking about Kennedy was the last time it was wrong. And if you actually do go back to the election of Kennedy, you'd find out that in Chicago and many other states across the country, there was all sorts of shenanigans going on in trying to manipulate those election results.
Kennedy cheated. Kennedy cheated to win. I mean, that's kind of a known thing. Am I going to get banned on YouTube
to say that? Because that's about Kennedy way back then.
Kennedy's
still bringing that up to the modern.
Everyone knows the Kennedy election was like really dodgy. That was the Chicago machine. That was dodgy as all get out. That was his
talking
dad
about
doing
Mayor Daley of Chicago. And that's the only time that that had been wrong. And since before that, we're going back to FDR, guys.
Wow.
We're going
So
back
64
to FDR.
never missed except in 2020 when it missed big time. So yeah, but the people down there, I mean, it's a little microcosm of the country, really, the way it's positioned, and it's the industry. It has some fishing down there and some mining, farming, different things, all the aspects right there. It's kind of the heartbeat of America. It has a heartbeat law right now.
There's one of the interesting things about Ohio, to talk about that from a perspective of like the kind of the microcosm of America. There's a town, I can't remember its name. Some Ohioan in the comments is going to say there's a town in there which is where all the fast food places go to test their new products. They go there and they put these new products out. And they've all the fast food places have got these restaurants there that do these new products. The reason why, as you say, it is like kind of just a snapshot of Americana. So you have urban areas, you have rural areas, you have suburban areas. You've got a really good mix of races, of demographics, of people with political views, and all of these kind of things. That you've got those got those things in there. I think as well, Joe. You were talking about this idea of we are all created equal. Right? That's a great expression. We've actually got a quote here from Mark Harrington, who's the president of Created Equal, which is obviously an organization latching onto that idea. Anyway, he said in a very recent statement, and this is an interesting statement that I kind of want to discuss on this. Extreme out-of-state abortion forces are trying to purchase a part of the Ohio Constitution. Unable to win in the legislature, extremists are attempting to enshrine painful late-term abortions in the Ohio Constitution. Ohioans will reject this takeover and defeat the abortion ballot measure. So obviously, he's sounding pretty confident that that's going to be overturned. I'm
not as confident.
I'm not confident. So, I think you and I are on the same page with this. Yeah. So, firstly, what you've got is every single time one of these measures to say, let's vote to see if we want abortion, every single time we've had one of those has come up. Every single time they've come up, gone to a plebiscite, it's been decided for abortion, even in like kind of what we might think.
Do you know why that is?
Very good. Well, because people want abortion.
People want abortion, but it's specifically a move by the Democrats, and the Democrats have been very shrewd in the way that they're going about their political strategy here, because what they're doing is they're going to colleges and just literally telling people they're going to ban it, 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 and get them all registered to vote and get them in line and get them to sign those things. So you actually have instances where there's more people voting on the ballot initiatives and not even voting in the actual political election. So you have lines, the voter turnout for young people goes way up on specifically these ballot measures that they try to put forward. And that's exactly what you're going to see in Ohio. That's why a red state like Kentucky suddenly had this major disappointment. And if you actually look at the polls in Ohio right now, they're saying 59% think that abortion should be generally legal. Yeah. But they do it on purpose, by the way, because that's how they frame it at the colleges. What they're actually doing is they're misrepresenting the question entirely, because most Americans actually don't believe that abortion across the board up until birth should be legal. Most of them do not. They believe in exceptions, which is still wrong, but nevertheless, these polls ask that general question. Right? And so when you have that general question, you're misrepresenting what's actually being done and changing the stats.
And I think this has something to do with the whole incremental approach. You have so many people that are saying just demonic things like late-term, they're bringing up late-term abortions, and so what do the good people do? Well, late-term abortions are bad. It's like, well, we're arguing if you can kill a baby who can survive if
partial birth abortion.
Yeah, so that's what the debate is, and then like you mentioned,
that's the real debate.
Yeah, exactly.
The desensitizing.
It's desensitizing, and so now you allow these exceptions, and obviously you don't allow exceptions, and so the bar is so low. So yes, these heartbeat bills are amazing. They're great. More babies are going to be saved, but it's like, well, we're arguing whether or not you can kill a human being. We're arguing, and so that's why I want to keep commending Cleveland Right to Life, because they really get to the heart of the issue. Yeah. They're talking about something that goes deeper. They're not saying they have, and that's why they allow no exceptions for any of this stuff. They know that the bar is so low, and so they're saying, well, what's at the heart of all this? It's marriage and it's the family. If we protect marriage and the family, and we promote and celebrate marriage and the family, then all of this stuff will just go away. And so they get to the heart of it, and they don't get caught up in the incrementalism, because they know the bar is so low. I'm not going to get stuck over here. I'm not going to argue with somebody whether or not you can kill a baby who's 21 weeks old.
I'd like to still bring up the Catholic moral position that if you have an extreme abortion law already on the books, you have partial birth abortion, say, for instance, and the vote comes up, do you want to have a, say, heartbeat bill that would ban all abortion up until, after 5 weeks? Oh, I can't vote for that because that's voting for abortion. Yeah. Well, the way you're framing it, it actually, in Catholic moral theology, absolutely, 110%, Father Milady, defendant, and the Holy Apostles, and this, to the teeth, to the hilt in class, that you can vote for that because what you're doing is voting for, I want to save as many as I can. I want to lessen as much as I can. I want to reduce the number of death. If 10 people are up there and being shot, and you can say, I vote that 7 of them get off the firing squad right now. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I am not willing that the other 3 get killed, but the other 3 are already going to be killed either way, and I'm not touching those 3. I can't. It's not given me to. Right. But I can say I want 7 of them taken off the firing line because I think all 10 are innocent. And that is something that I think some purists or some alt-right Catholics don't quite have their brain around. What Cleveland Right to Life is absolutely, morally, all life is precious, all the way back to the pro-life, the family, and let's get society back on track, all of that 110%. But at the end of the day, when you do have a law that's already more severe, and you can vote for a law that's less severe, going to be less drastic, less killing less people, you're voting to reduce. Yeah. And you're not pro-abortion or pro-incrementalism there. Yeah. Because, no, I'm for 0 abortion. But if I can get, 2,500 babies out of 3,000 saved every day, I will vote for that. Yes, I will vote for that.
Right. So it's interesting, you see. So you've got the situation in those cases where you're making the perfect the enemy of the good, which is a very common phrase. And it's this idea of, well, I can't have perfection, so we won't have good. We'd rather stick where we are. And obviously that would be a flawed notion. In many cases, this kind of incrementalism incrementalism gets a really bad rap in much the same way as the seamless garment theology theory gets a really bad rap, meaning that people have an understanding of what it is, and it is used, the phrase is used wrongly. The original seamless garment theology was the idea of you can't just focus on abortion, or you can't just focus on contraception, you can't just focus on homosexuality. You've got to look at kind of everything, so you've got to be dealing with all these things. Now, of course, what it's done is it's sort of, people are using it in the other way of like, well, if you're, you say we shouldn't have abortions, but you're not particularly down with, opening your doors completely for immigrants, therefore you're evil. No, that's not what it means. I am 100% behind the idea of incrementalism if it is, in fact, incremental. Okay, so you've got the guy out there, very popular these days, Jordan B. Peterson, always telling people to go and tidy your room. Always telling people to go, also stand back up like a lobster, apparently. I'm not entirely sure what he's about. But go and tidy your room. Okay, so if you imagine out there, if you are a teenage boy yourself, or you know any teenage boys, you will know that their rooms are an absolutely awful mess. And you might say to the teenage boy, well, go tidy your room, go do this. If he goes and just hoovers the floor a bit, just does that, doesn't do anything else, okay, that's incrementalism. The next day, he's got to start picking up his socks and putting them in the laundry hamper. The day after that, he's got to start taking down his moldy plates and taking them down to the sink. But if he was just to say, oh, well, I've tidied my room because I've hoovered the floor and everything else is there, that's not incrementalism. That's accepting a lesser level.
Yes, and I want to point out that the reason the left got to this point where we're even debating stuff like partial birth abortion, they got there through incrementalism, right? Yeah. We can look at how this all started. First you have feminism, then you have contraception. Then after you have contraception, you have divorce. It is divorce, yeah. But you have divorce, and then you have abortion coming after that. But safe, legal, and rare was how they started with it, and now it's shout your abortion, and things like that. That's an incremental thing. And what the incremental approach of a Catholic ought to be, what the seamless garment for a Catholic ought to be right now, is the full restoration of the American family, as this was a full frontal attack against the family. So what do we have to do? We have to focus on getting rid of things like divorce. We have to focus on getting rid of things like abortion and contraception. Every single attack that they mounted against us as Catholics, that's how you defeat them. That's the incrementalism I'm down with. It doesn't change the fact of what I believe. I believe all those things need to go
how you're going to get
yesterday. They need to have been gone yesterday.
Yeah.
But today, they're not. So I will fight and get rid of every single one of them incrementally if I have to.
Throwing some Catholicism in there, the Fatima was actually, Sister Lucia, as we mentioned mentioned before that she said Satan's final attack will be against the family. And if we haven't seen that in spades, contraception, divorce, abortion, the whole LGBT, same-sex marriage, and now transgender. Just look on Fox right now and all the transgender issue being taken care of. But the one thing Cleveland has going, well, Ohio has going for them is the bishops also are coming out. In February, they had a fairly strong statement that the Catholic bishops of Ohio put out a statement in February as the pro-aborts were gathering signatures to present them to the Ohio Secretary of State. The bishop stated, "The church must not be silent and cannot remain on the sidelines when confronted with such a clear threat to human life. This proposal demands a response, and we strongly encourage Catholics and all people of goodwill in Ohio to work against including the proposed amendment for the November ballot. And if it appears on the ballot, vote against the amendment to prevent countless deaths of preborn innocent children." Now, to channel Michael Voris here, that's wonderful. You made a great statement. Good, strong statement. Was there one the next weekend? Was it from the pulpits every weekend? Where are we right now? Are you putting rallying with the people? Do I see priests on Fox News leading processions down the streets right now against this, or not? And if not, why not?
I have a question. I just have an honest question. I actually don't know the answer to this, so you can tell me. How many fundraisers have the bishops engaged in to defeat this bill? How much money have they tried to raise? How much effort has been actually put into defeating this amendment? I'm just curious.
Well, the USCCB, the United States Catholic Conference, never has raised money for an abortion.
Right, but in other words, they'll still collect money, for migrant and refugee services on their budget. They'll still collect money for all those. They'll still support climate agenda items. They'll use financial support for those things. But why aren't they doing it for these pro-life issues? Why are they just releasing a statement and then distancing themselves?
Well, I remember the first year of Trump's presidency, and they came out with statement after statement after statement. They had no qualms about putting out numbers.
Where's
of
the fundraising?
Well, but you see, the interesting thing with that is you've got, it's like you and I discussed, Brad, when we were talking about the defund the bishops thing, down in D.C. and the deposit of faith thing. All of these statements, they're coming from the USCCB, and they're coming from the USCCB. It's like, okay, do they have a bishop's signature? No, they're not. They're coming from staffers. The USCCB, like the individual bishops, some of whom are down with it, some of whom are kind of casual about it, some of whom are against it. I don't think, Bishop Strickland, for example, just to pull him up, was probably for it. But the committee, the conference, votes for it. So what you end up with is this statement that appears to come from the bishops.
That dates back all the way to February, wasn't like Wednesday or last week.
Yeah, it comes back there, and you've got these statements that come, and these anti-Trump statements or whatever, and they're not statements that actually reflect Catholic teaching. They're not statements that actually reflect any Catholic authority, because they come from these conferences and stuff. Again, the Catholic bishops of Ohio put out that's from the conference, from the collective of all the bishops in Ohio. We don't have any quotes here. Maybe there was a bishop. Again, if you're from Ohio, one, I'm sorry, but two, it's a Michigan Ohio thing. It's just constant rivalry. But if you've got a statement from your bishop, I'd love to see it. Put it in the comments.
And to add, I think to add a kind of an opposing point of view on this, in my opinion, so the bishop's statement, that's great. You put out a statement, sure. I think in an ideal world, I think the way that the church is set up, it'd be great if they didn't even have to do this. Right. If they didn't have to do this, and I don't think they need to. I think that if they didn't have to baby the laity and say, like, okay, you got to vote on this bill, you can't vote on that bill, it'd be nice if Catholics just had an informed Catholic conscience and they just did this stuff, and they didn't need to wait around for the bishop to say this or that. I don't think they need to do that anyways. But the way that the church is set up, the clergy are there. They nourish the faithful with the sacraments. We go out there. We're supposed to be on the front lines doing all these things, all these marches, all these protests, all that stuff. That's the work of the work of the laity. It'd be nice. That's the ideal, is the way that I see it. So all these statements, I don't think you would need a bishop or a priest to come out and say, every week with all these statements going on Fox News. It's cool to see that and everything, but I think in an ideal world, it's the laity who are out there bleeding on the battlefield, and it's the clergy who are there nourishing them with the sacraments, and then they're establishing Christ's reign on earth, in the day to day. So it's a little bit of an opposing point of view. But go ahead.
Yeah, I don't necessarily agree with that fully, because and I say it for this reason at all. Do we know how the Christian man was actually created throughout Western civilization? It was largely through legal force that people were cultivated into the moral people that they were. If we look at the Romans, they believed in slavery. If we look at the Greeks, heavy into homosexuality. Romans were obviously into homosexuality as well. That all had to be cultivated out of them, and it took many hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years for them to actually become subordinate to a new religion, to actually follow the values, to develop a civilization that followed those values. That takes a lot of time. And when you don't have an authoritative body that's actually active in the lives of those people, the people themselves actually aren't going to change. Now, you're talking about a fantasy world right now, and that's great, and I do agree that that would be the best situation, ideally, but it's not real.
Right. I think the counterpoint to that is that when you force or try and coerce, I'm not saying you're trying to coerce people into virtue or whatever, well, then it's obviously not virtue. And so, yeah, the ideal
that's how virtue starts, though.
Well, no, not really.
No, it does.
Virtue starts by,
because if it doesn't happen with them, it might happen with their children or with their children's children. That's my whole point. This is a generational thing. We're building a civilization. We're cultivating a family unit that has beliefs, that's trained in those beliefs. You have to have authority before you have obedience to authority.
Right, and you can have authority. Yeah, the individual conscience. That's the truth itself. That's the highest authority, and so you can do that.
But they're not. But their consciences are all erroneous.
Sure. So you form it properly, and that's the Catholic take. Is that I'm a
How do you form
everyday
it properly?
I'm an everyday layman. Well, we got
through authority.
Yeah, authority of Scripture, authority of the Church's teachings.
But people aren't looking at that. You need an authority to tell them that you need to cultivate that. You need society to do that.
No, and this is good. My point is that if you are conditioning yourself to be babied by people, then that's not really the ideal. The ideal is that you form your Catholic conscience properly, and then you act accordingly, and then you go about, and you're not that way. You don't need a bishop to come around and say vote on this bill, or a priest to say you can go to that wedding or that wedding. You're forming your conscience in line with the truth, and then you're moving along. And in line with the Church's teaching, and you're moving along. That to me is that's what we're looking.
What we're talking about, though, with the need for Catholic leadership, Catholic leaders, and to motivate the people. We're not talking about coercing, but we are talking about leading. And what you're talking about there is, nourished with the sacraments. Okay, that's priest, but they're also in the alter Christus, they're prophet and king. Prophet is teacher, and that's informing people's conscience, and that's what they're to do. Christ was not just redeemer, sanctifier, but he's also teacher. He was a great teacher, great shepherd, and they are the alter Christus. They're forced to, and Jesus commissioned them to teach. In all fairness,
right? And he commissions us to teach as well, to preach the gospel.
Hold on. I get that. But as well means not in replacement of, or they can just sit on the bench and we'll take care of it. And that's, as long as we're talking about, and in every generation you need that fresh stream of teaching. So we don't get just grace from the church like a vending machine and then we run out and play ball. We're actually being taught as well. So, and in this instance, we also see the kingship here, not authoritarian in the sense of just coercing and beating people, but actually taking that stand. I love to see a priest at the front of a rally, like in the Dodgers protest or to an abortion rally, going to the abortion clinic there, being with the sheep. He's actually there doing far more leadership than he realizes, and in that is kingship. That kingship is guiding, ruling, leading, at least by example, and it's wonderful to have that leadership. Do you absolutely need to have dad at home to do those? No. Dad's a deadbeat dad, or he left, or we're divorced, we won't have a dad, he died, and I can be, I'm 12 years old and I'll fill his shoes. Yeah, you can. And we're so conditioned in the last 50 years not to have that leadership that we're like, all right, well, I'll just do this on my own. And that's what we have a lot of. But I don't think in God's plan, and especially in the Great Commission, it can be misunderstood that only the priests are supposed to teach.
Sure.
Only they're supposed to evangelize.
Right.
Father John Hardin went so far as to say, if you're not in, you personally, people, are not in the business of evangelizing, you shouldn't entertain any great hopes of getting to heaven. Those are sobering words, and that speaks to your issue, that no, we don't need to be babied, but my little boy doesn't need to be babied either, but he ought to be raised up to be, and with the help of priests and hearing good homilies and instruction and, serving at Mass and hearing good things in the confessional and all that type of stuff, all of that formation from the priest, from the parent, and from his religious educators, which oftentimes were nuns and religious, and that he gets that complete formation, that he will be then active in life. And no, it's not, the priest shouldn't grab people's hands and pull them out into the streets and come on, let's go, and all this, and wheel people in wheel carts and push them out there and beat them with the crozier and everything. No. But he's priest, prophet, and king. So priest, yes, he's given them the grace of the sacraments, nourishing them, so they have the grace to do it. Prophet, teaching them to do what they have to do. In this case, standing up for the unborn.
Sure.
Greatest sign of masculinity, laying down your life for those who defend us.
I think that's the point where it's if you're conditioning, if we're conditioning ourselves to have to wait around for a statement or for something from somebody else, doesn't matter if it's a bishop or if it's a pro-life quote-unquote leader, to act, and we're not just doing that ourselves.
Well, what you've got there, you see, with Brad talking about the notion of the priest, prophet, and king thing, we as the laity, we are, because of our baptism, because of our confirmation, we ourselves are priest, prophet, and king. Now, obviously, we're not priests in the same way as Father Smith, at the parish. We're
redemptive suffering and grace.
Right, exactly. I mean, we're priests in that sense, the priests of the laity. And you can talk about it; it's kind of complicated, but we're all empowered to do that, speak truth, which is how you talk about prophet is as a teacher. Prophet is to speak the truth, and we're all empowered to do that. And I think if you actually look at Ohio, coming back to Ohio here, you've got Mike DeWine, who has signed this bill into law. He didn't have to sign this bill into law. He could have just left it on his desk. He could have said, you know what, I don't like the law. I'm vetoing the law. I'm not signing it. I don't know what the Ohio rule is on overturning a governor's veto or refusal to sign. But clearly he chose to sign this bill into law. He's got a large family, which is a good direct witness of his Catholicity. So he's acting as this leader there. The representatives, the legislature, who passed this law without any exceptions for rape or incest, well, those people are leaders, they're examples, they're leading people. There is, as Joe points out, this has it's kind of the coercive quality of legal weight, which is important.
That's what I want to go into a little bit, actually, if you don't mind. Finish up. But.
No. I was going to say that and then, of course, you've got the Catholic bishops coming with a statement, can talk about it, and you've got Cleveland Right to Life, who are coming out with this whole, uncompromising position, no exceptions for rape or incest, this holistic approach to all life issues. So, Ohio is actually really doing very well, I think, in terms of leaders of different kinds who are using different forms of leadership, going from the kind of the spiritual leadership, going from the coercive force of law, all of these things. Yeah, Ohio's really, leading the way, which is why I think it's probably very sad that you look at those numbers, those poll numbers, and it's like, this bill could, this ballot measure could pass, and they could end up with that.
And this goes to the point at which maybe people do need to start being treated like children. Maybe they do need to start being disciplined, and maybe there needs to be something going on here. And I actually want to go back to something that you had said earlier, Brad, where you talked about we're not trying to coerce, we're not trying to force. No, call me a right-wing extremist. I am trying to force and coerce. I'm trying to force you and coerce you out of getting an abortion. I do not care if you think it is right. I do not care if you think it is wrong. It does not matter to me one way or another. What matters to me is that you are not doing it. Yeah. That's what matters. Yeah. And I'm willing, and that's the thing. I think that anybody involved in the process of getting an abortion outside of somebody who was coerced and forced to get one ought to be punished for it. There needs to be strict punishments. People need to be cultivated into being moral people and forced from doing evil to other people if need be. It has to happen. I mean, are we coercing? We coerce and force people not to murder one another.
This is a perfect segue into an open letter to state lawmakers, and this was signed by almost every big pro-life organization out there. Two of their tenets, and Joe, this segues perfectly. Two of their tenets: women are victims of abortion. Criminalizing women is antithetical to this charge. This was signed by National Right to Life, Susan B. Anthony List, U.S. Conference of Catholic, this was Archbishop Lori, so on behalf of the USCCB, Pro-Life Action League, and about, 50 or 60 other organizations. So they are pushing this lie, I will call it boldly, and that women are the victims of abortion. We shouldn't want to criminalize this. We shouldn't want to prosecute women for doing this because, according to them, they have no culpability. They have no responsibility. They have no idea what they're doing, and that's the lie pushed by Pro-Life Incorporated. That it's an absolute lie. It's complete. It's bogus.
What that is an example of bogus incrementalism. That's the point. The point is they're actually espousing the belief that adult women are not personally accountable for their actions, and on a personal level, I find that to be incredibly anti-woman.
Well, yes, it is. I think one certainly has to look and say there needs to be prosecutorial discretion with regard to this. Each case needs to be looked at individually, because certainly the phrase "women are victims of abortion," or "women are victims of abortion," the vast majority of women who've had an abortion have regretted it, have suffered because of it. They have not, the whole "shout your abortion" movement, as you referenced earlier, Joe, that took place because there were so many women who were going, I had an abortion and this was an awful thing, and I did not know that it was going to be like this. I was given lies about this. I was told lies. So, the question of saying that to come and say women are creatures without agency, absolutely horribly wrong. But to come and say that every single woman who had an abortion is doing so with full cold knowledge of what she is doing and how it is going to impact her and everything else, that itself is that there are so much lies surrounding this entire thing. When they come along and say, oh, you're having the abortion, your baby is but a clump of cells. Well, no, your baby has like hands and fingers and feet and a face, and you can see your child. Your child is.
That's the court's, and that's the court's discretion.
Well, that's prosecutorial.
You're right. That's something that should be left to the court's discretion. I don't particularly buy that. I don't think that there might be a few, but most people know exactly what's going on. It's all cope. It's all lack of accountability.
But it's just basic moral theology. Is when the circumstances around you, when the environment around you is pushing this stuff on you, making it out, telling the women, it's just a clump of cells or whatever, your culpability, your responsibility, it is diminished. Doesn't mean that you have no idea what you're doing, because all of those women, and I had the privilege of spending almost every Saturday. There's a pro-life organization out here. They do pro-life counseling, sidewalk counseling on 8 Mile. I've done that. One of my coworkers got me into it. I did that for a year or two, and just kind of watching some of the guys do it. The women know exactly what they're doing. Nobody's really arguing that. They know what they're doing. Their responsibility is it's diminished based on the circumstances, based on the environment. Sometimes there was like really young girls walking in there with like their dad and their mom kind of holding their hand to go in. That's like a situation where you're just like, whoa. But to bring up the core of the issue, because we're always kind of going deep into these issues, Mother Teresa, the Mother Teresa quote. Adrian was holding the sign with the Mother Teresa quote. Abortion kills twice. It kills the baby, and then it kills the conscience of the mother, the body of the baby and the conscience of the mother. And that's the real issue, is that you're going and you're hiring a hitman, as Pope Francis says, and that's exactly what's happening. And they come out and they're spiritually destroyed by that. And that's the real issue. And that's why the whole pro-life ministry, you're doing it the right way. It's just evangelization. That's all it is. You're just preaching the gospel when you're out there trying to help these women. That's all it is.
Well, in the Code of Canon Law, the Church's law, actually does hold the woman accountable. Because what's it, 1397? It used to be 1398, and then it's 1397 for whatever reason. They changed the numbering. But paragraph 2 that says if whoever's procuring an actual abortion is actually excommunicated, and that always has applied to the mother. If the mother went and got an abortion, full free will and knowledge and all that's between her and God, and even the confessor can't read hearts and everything else. But you're treating that as, okay, well, you did this. And she goes to the confessional, and there has to be an excommunication, an automatic ipso facto, a lete sententiae excommunication lifted. And it's the Apostolic See actually giving the permission to.
Is that reserved for the Apostolic See?
but it's being given to the priest. But yes, it is, but then it's being delegated to the priest. So, but that's actually, though, there's an excommunication that has to be lifted. So the Code of Canon Law says if you don't have that lifted and you're a Catholic and you went and had this done and there was whatever degree of, like you say, mitigating circumstances, don't mean there's no culpability whatsoever. They mitigate, but they don't. And to be fair to women on that part right there, that's why they don't want to have ultrasounds a lot of time. Because look at that ultrasound, they see the baby and they're horrified. Yeah. Whoa, that just like really brings back all that natural law that says me, you know, mother and baby and all this type of thing. So the Code of Canon Law does. I don't know, Lori's saying, well, don't hold them accountable. Well, then you should change Code of Canon Law, because the church's law says it.
And nobody's willing to have this. Like, nobody's willing to have this discussion, this dialogue. I have been trying to, with mic'd up, I've been trying to get a debate. I don't even call it a debate. I call it a dialogue or discussion about this very topic. Should women be prosecuted for having abortions? And I have reached out to almost everybody on this list. We have had interviews set up or debates set up where they just kind of, they don't end up happening.
And that's people who actually signed off, put articles out.
Oh my! And they're not passive about this. They're actually promoting this idea that women should not be held accountable for killing their babies, for murdering their own offspring. And that to me is just, I mean, obviously that's despicable, but to not even, nobody in the pro-life movement can have this conversation. Nobody can dialogue about this when somebody has an opposing viewpoint.
Every once in a while you have these shows come up on, or these horrific cases come up in the media where a mother actually has put to death her 6-month-old baby, or, you know, 1-year-old, and everybody's like horrified. Oh my gosh, you could have did that, huh? But you could have had a partial birth abortion. Everybody's like, well, that's your right to do that. Yeah. And here's absolute accountability. There's no way you could not. Well, maybe she was on drugs, had a bad life, raised all sorts of problems and everything else, but you still did that, and everybody says you did that. You shouldn't have done that, and there's laws against that. All the people, thugs on the streets, so I thought, you know, it's me against them. I can kill, you know, dog eat dog world, you know, got to be me, got to be free, and all these other rationalizations used. But they still, at the end of the day, have a law that says, no, you can't steal that car.
And that comes, you see, that comes down to the thing that Joe was saying earlier, that you have the coercive power of the state, which is challenged by the ridiculous phrase, you can't legislate morality. And it's like, I assure you we can. We do that all the time. I mean, that's what we do when you come along. And equally, you can legislate immorality. For example, within the state of Michigan, it is legal to recreationally use marijuana, which is totally and utterly immoral, and I don't care, all the potheads watching, I don't care. It's terrible. It deprives you of your rationality. It is not, you know, a drug that should be used in a recreational manner. Not speaking about medicinal use of marijuana and so forth, but you know, there you have it. You know, you come along and you say, okay, well, we're going to legalize prostitution in certain jurisdictions. There's certain places, you know, prostitution is legalized. I think there are some places in Nevada that have legalized that, and some places in Europe. You know, you come along and you say, well, we're going to legalize certain, if we're going to effectively legalize certain kinds of robbery. For example, we've discussed here on this very set the issue of rising criminality, which is occurring because of robberies that are occurring in these inner cities, these large cities. So, for example, San Francisco, lots of robberies happening there. There is a limit of value, like $900 or something, and if it's under $900, it's not a felony, and it's a misdemeanor or what have you. If it's over $900, it's a felony. There it is. Under $900, it's not a felony, misdemeanor, and the DA is not prosecuting these misdemeanors. So effectively, it's like, okay, so this says now what you have done is you have legislated, or you have, through your prosecutorial discretion, you have allowed immorality. But the same can also occur with the notion of morality. If you came along and said, okay, new sheriff in town, almost literally new DA, I'm going to be prosecuting misdemeanors to the fullest extent of the law. And if the legislator came and said, hey, the bar is not $900, the bar is $50. You know, the bar is $50, and that's what we're looking at there. Then suddenly you would see, well, you're now legislating morality. It's one of the qualities of a penal system, the rarest things the penal system does, one of which is it discourages criminal behavior in those individuals who have not committed criminal behavior. You see some guy get punished, however he gets punished, for committing some criminal activity. You, if you are not a total moron, go, maybe I shouldn't do that thing because I too will be punished. And in just the same way, and there's also still, even with this question of, well, okay, the punishment seems somewhat ephemeral and somewhat disconnected from it. Just the mere idea of this is illegal. A sign that's stuck up and says no parking between 9 a.m. and 9 p.m., you know what? Decent, good people, you know, fine, you're goody two-shoes, you're a bit straight edge, you don't park there between 9 a.m. and 9 p.m. You don't park there. And it's just like, you know, you may not get a ticket, you may not be punished, but you don't do it because it's there. And yes, so to have these laws on the books, which are, you know, that abortion is illegal, that abortion will be punished, however it will be punished, that, you know, these are the penalties associated with it. These things do have a salutary effect on people's behavior. Absolutely, you can legislate morality.
Now, we're down to the populace, though, and that's a scary thing in this country. Once the populace votes, and this happened in Kansas and Michigan, where the Constitution got changed, Kentucky, Montana, where pro-life referendums got knocked down, and also in Vermont and California. So we're 0 for 6 on these. And Ohio should be worried because they're number 7. And how is that going to go? Well, if you look at the way the populace in this country go, it's a very low bar because, my goodness, when you start doing poll survey of what's in the brain of the Gen Zers and the millennials, you're going to find everything out there, from socialism and Marxism and atheism and everything else. Some people are religious or spiritual but not religious, and there's just a whole bunch of knowns out there, and there's like knowns with regard to natural law and common sense and the whole bit. So, and they were raised on this whole superficial media world. So that, speaking to Trey's issue right there, the bishop and priests, and that can't be out every single workplace environment, rubbing shoulders with everybody on the team, the track and field. They can't be in the hallways and all of that. So yes, they can help, you know, as you come to church, and they can be preaching on these things and having seminars and shops. But you, at the end of the day, still have to take that message out. And that was where the wonderful thing about third order groups and oblates and all this, those people were really on fire to go out into rub shoulders with people that the priest would never, ever see. And just the common sense, not only could it be done, but it absolutely has to be. It has to be the both and. It has to be leadership, solid Catholic leadership, and solid Catholic laity that is taking that message and going, you know, a coach and a team type of thing. Does the team always need a coach? If he falls dead, hey, we're going to still win this game. We can start calling audibles or whatever else and do it. But it is good to have a coaching staff and have, you know, instruction and all those type of things from people who just spent their whole life learning and 2,000 years behind them to boot, where I'm just, you know, just born. I'm 18 and don't know that much, and you've been studying this stuff for 40 years. Well, what is all this about? So these referendums, though, it's down to the laity. And I'd like to also put, before the end of the show here, a couple of quotes more about St. Teresa of Calcutta. You know, we talk about poverty, and women are in poverty, and that's why they're doing this and everything. She said, "It is a poverty to decide that a child must die so that you may live as you wish." Right there, she's kind of talking to the mom. You know? Not this poor woman who's just in a dither and I can't make up any, you know, decisions on my own. Mother Teresa, a very nice person, said it's poverty, and she's talking to a woman. A child must die so that you may live as you wish. And then she's speaking to the country. Any country that accepts abortion is not teaching its people to love, but to use violence to get what they want. And a quicker, shorter way, a quote of hers that was very well received. The fruit of abortion is war. So where we're at right now with regard to Russia and China and North Korea and the Middle East with Iran and all this type of stuff, we're looking at, you know, the American military complex, industrial complex, and we're going to be flexing our muscles at a time we're actually quite weak in many ways. And this might makes right type of thing is falling apart all around us. So we need to get back to why, you know, we're at the point we are with regard to if war is coming and all this type of thing. You know, we can always say, well, God's chastised us. Well, actually, he's allowing us to chastise ourselves. And what we've been doing is killing 3,000 babies a day in this country for how many decades now? And we've desensitized to the point where we just don't really get, the value of life anymore. And it's coming out in many ways, not just abortion. So we need strong Catholic leadership from the pulpit and from the pews to turn this thing around, especially now that it's at the grassroots level, and all of our leadership now is being thrown to the Gen Z and millennials. What do you all think we ought to do? And that's something the Supreme Court won't even touch. They're like, the people have decided, and what do you do after that? So it's a scary situation. I hope that, hope and pray. I hope our viewers will keep Ohio in your prayers, that they get the referendum bumped up to they need 60%, and that somehow they don't hit that threshold of 60%, because that would be such a terrible. Well, they'd be in Michigan then, wouldn't they? Where we have one of the most radical abortion laws in the country, most radical abortion, and now they just outlawed reparative therapy as at the behest of Governor Whitmer. And so we're in a bad situation.
Soon outlawing hate speech, too.
Hate speech, which could be anything that it used to be, well, if you triggered me, now I'm upset. Well, now if you trigger me, you go to jail.
Yep, $10,000 fine maybe.
It's about me being triggered. I didn't really say much. Well, I took it wrong. I'm sorry, but now you have to go to jail. So, well, thank you for joining us for today's episode of The Download. Now please join us as we finish in prayer, begging Our Lady's intercession for our nation and our church. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit.
Amen.
Salve Regina,
Mater misericordiae, vita dulcedo et spes nostra salve. A te clamamus exules filii Eve. A te suspiramus gementes et flentes, in hac lacrimarum vale. Ea ergo advocata nostra, ilos tuos misericordes oculos ad nos converte. Et Iesum benedictum fructum ventris tui, nobis post hoc exilium ostende, o clemens Sophia, o dulcis Virgo Maria. Amen.
In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit.
Amen.
And thank you again for joining us for The Download. We premiere a new episode like this every weekday at 5 p.m. Eastern Time. From all of us here at Church Militant, God bless you.